Hey, I bet you're one of those people who absolutely believes that all good writing is fiction. All books are written just so that you could hear a good story. Not true. Today we have a very special guest who has written a very special book. And it's a book not only about stories, but a book about how you can be successful. My name is Vin Dacquino. Our guest today is Carol Heady. Carol, let's talk writing.
Good morning, Vin.
Carol, pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
I have been going through turning rants into raves, and I am very impressed. Tell me a little bit about this book. What is this book about? And who are you, Carol Heady?
Well, let's see. I'll start with who I am, and then I'll talk about the book.
That
How
works.
does that sound? Well, you know, I'm going to put this in the context of the book because what I ended up doing in terms of a career is I really wanted to be a teacher originally. So I have a degree in teaching.
Oh.
And what's interesting is I never became an elementary school teacher. My teaching stems from teaching adults because I do a lot of training and development.
Big difference.
Very big difference. They
I've
come
done
with
both.
life experience. Yes, you can relate to this, I know.
Yes, I can.
So I went back to school in order to become an adjunct professor because that was one of my passions.
Wow.
And I studied human resource development and organizational management.
That's interesting because this is human resource.
Yes, a lot of it is about human
is.
resource, human behavior. And so that led into a career transition, really focusing on training and development in corporations. So I was a corporate trainer and
So sort of the do's and don'ts in business.
yes, helping people understand that.
Good. And understanding yourself. That's another thing
Yes.
about this book that impressed me. It's understanding who you are and what to deliver out there.
Yes. So self-reflection is a really important component of the book because the book is designed to focus on CEOs, managers, and business owners who have a responsibility to help their employees understand how to deliver exceptional customer service.
So it allows them to see the big picture.
Yes.
Sometimes CEOs sit on their thrones. Sorry, CEOs. But they sit on their thrones and run the business from the seat. And I know, true for administration, even school administration. You have to understand what it's like to be in the trenches. So you ask them to see both sides.
We ask them to really take a step back as they read through the book and reflect on what we are presenting, because we give them questions to think about as we look at the 5 principles that are delivered in the book in terms of what do they need to be mindful of in that position, not only in terms of themselves, because how they treat their employees will have a direct impact on how their employees treat the customer.
There you go. Now, when you deliver your information to these CEOs and to any of the people in the business, it's very important that you deliver it in a way that is effective. And that brings us to writing. Organizing all of these ideas and thoughts that you have in such a way that they understand what you're trying to say to them. Now, I absolutely love the idea that you put your 5 commandments on the back of the book. Tell us about those 5 commandments.
Sure. These are really the heart and soul of the book. And so we talk about the first one being think like an owner. In other words, help your employees understand what it is that you would do and want them to do as an owner of the business and take responsibility for that.
So you put them in your shoes?
Yes, we ask them to really have the employee think about, if this was your business, how would you think like an owner? And what would you do differently in relationship to that? So not just the CEO is a part of this process, but we want them involving their employees in terms of thinking like an owner.
What do those employees need to do to create what you see as a complete business? Okay.
The second principle is build a relationship. So,
Build a relationship with the customer or with the
Yes.
employees?
well, Vinny,
Both.
I'm glad you asked that because I think both are important and
Yeah.
one mirrors the other. And it goes back to how are they interacting? How's the CEO or the manager or the business owner interacting with their employees? Are they creating an environment in which people develop relationships with each other and are very mindful of how they are treating each other and really wanting to build a relationship with their employees as well?
So that's another facet. Now, you brought up three interesting things to me. When you think of an employee, how does the employee react to customers? How does the employee fit into the entire atmosphere of your business? And how do employees react to each other? That's key. Because if your employees hate each other, that's going to absolutely penetrate. And people are going to see that. So it is important how they react to each other too.
Yes, because that has a direct impact on how they're going to interact with their customers. And, the importance of this is it's the experience they create for the customer that's going to determine whether or not that customer comes back. And so the other aspect of this is tying these behaviors that we talk about in the book to the financial impact to the organization.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
Yes.
Can you stay in business?
Yes.
Is the business making money?
Right.
And it isn't just a matter of can you sell your product? Can you sell yourself to the public?
Because financially, customer service has an impact on what we refer to as the 4 R's. So,
4 R's.
4 R's, yes. Revenue,
Yep.
right? Retention, meaning customer retention. And I also think it impacts employee retention because if you have happy employees,
That's
they're going
right.
to... Right.
And if they stay and they're used to the place and people are used to them, there's people who come to businesses just because they like the employees and they're
Yes.
comfortable with them.
It's what makes the difference.
Yeah, big difference. To me it is. If I don't like the salespeople, I don't go back. Same thing with restaurants. If I don't like the wait staff, I don't go back. Even the food could be wonderful. I don't go back.
But it's the power behind the service
Yes.
and the employees and how they deliver
The
that.
attitude.
Yes. And so the other 2 R's are reputation,
Good, yep.
because you're going to talk about your experience to other people.
That's right.
And they're going to decide whether or not to go do business with that particular company or restaurant. And then referrals. It impacts the ability, right?
Who do you tell?
Who you tell.
Right.
And whether or not you're going to make a referral to that company.
Makes sense. So we talked about the first 2 principles.
Yes.
Third principle.
Third principle, remove the roadblocks. In other words, make it easy to do business with your company. Don't make it hard. Don't make the customer jump through hoops to do business with you.
So customers, or are we also talking about people who service the business?
Yes. The other aspect of this is if you make your policies and procedures difficult for your employees to serve the customer, that's also what we really help the CEO start to think about. Are your procedures and policies customer friendly and employee friendly?
Yep. That is so important. When rules are created, we have to ask ourselves, are we serving the rules or are we serving the people who follow the rules? That's a big statement because many times there's a set of rules and regulations that don't make sense for your employees. And it's just the rules of the franchise, not the rules of the store, not the rules of... These people know what they need to do. If you create the atmosphere that you need for these employees to be happy, they're going to make the customers happy.
Right.
And needless rules are needless.
Exactly. And often they're not put in place with keeping the customer in mind. In other words,
Yep.
And so I constantly am telling my clients, don't even use policy or procedure in your vocabulary when you're servicing a customer.
When I was teaching, and I taught for many years, I used to say this over and over again, that some people got it, some people didn't. They say, you teaching English, right? I say, no, I teach children. And that's a big difference.
Yes.
I didn't teach English. I taught children. And those children had to learn English. and you have to respect the child in order to teach what the child needs. Same thing with a business.
Right.
If you want your employees to service the customer, then that's exactly what they have to do. They have to understand the customer and respect the customer. I like that.
Good.
Principle 3. Principle 4.
Principle 4. Walk in your customer's shoes.
Walk in your customer's shoes.
The focus,
Even if it's not a shoe store?
Yeah, even if it's not a shoe store. Because the focus of this is really demonstrating empathy to your customer and really understanding what you're doing from their perspective, as well as putting yourself in those shoes, thinking about it from their perspective.
Why
not
are those
yours.
customers at your store?
Yes.
What are they doing there? What do you have to give them to get them to come back again?
And if there's any type of challenge or difficulty and they're upset, it's demonstrating empathy to that person so that you develop a rapport with them. It goes back to developing a relationship. And if you can do this effectively, this particular principle, you will have a lifelong, loyal customer.
Yep. And that's important to do if you want to stay in business, especially
Yes.
today.
Absolutely.
Competition's tough today.
Yes.
I mean, there are a lot of businesses are going down fast.
They are. And your customer service strategy can separate you from your competition because it's no longer about products and services. You know, when you think about banking, for example, if you needed a mortgage, a car loan, a checking account, you could go to any bank. There's probably 4 or 5 right out here,
Yep.
right, in our area.
All in the same place.
All in the same place.
Next door to each other.
Right. So what separates them? It's not the product or service, right, that they have. It's the experience that their employees are creating for that customer so that that customer continues to do banking there.
Yep. This goes back to, again, teaching, and back to my very first book, Kissed Candy Days Goodbye. When this young boy discovered that he had diabetes, and the doctor said to him, Jimmy, you're going to be different. And he said, I don't want to be different. She says, whoa, listen, it's not being different that's important. It's how you wear that difference. Don't be different, be unique. Be special. So if you're going to be who you are with the customer in mind, business in mind, the overall picture. So you can be different, but you have to understand where that difference fits with everything else. Good. I like that.
Because then you stand out in a positive way.
Yes, it's good to stand out.
Yes.
I mean, especially today. Take a look around. You know how I judge it? By the children. Go to a school. You'll see boys with hair down to here. You'll see boys with butch cuts. You see, all with their own style. Some of them with baggy clothes. Some of them with tight clothes. Some of them look like Justin Bieber, 9,000 of them. And some of them look like somebody else. It's what style you choose for you. So I would imagine a business is very much like that. You have to create your own persona. Okay, I like that. All right, principle number 5.
Principle number 5. Capture your customer's heart.
Capture your customer's heart.
Yeah.
I like that.
And its focus is on what makes that person special and what can you create.
So
from
not
that.
only what makes you special to them, but what makes them special. How do you recognize their uniqueness?
Yeah.
Good. Again, putting yourself in the customer's shoes
Yes.
and understanding not only what the customer needs, but what the customer wants.
Yes. And if you can
I
do
like
both
it.
of those things, you can be very successful at really creating loyal customers who rave about your company and your employees.
Okay, so now I'm going to put you in a different pair of shoes.
Okay.
Because now I have you as a person who understands business. Now I want you to talk a little bit about the writer in you. Now that you understand what a business has to be, how do you get it to these CEOs? How do you put this together in such a way that the CEO is willing to read it, understand it, and get it. Now I'm going to touch on a touchy subject.
Okay.
Partnership. Now you had a partner when you did this book.
I did.
Recently I had 3 guests on at the same time. All 3 of them wrote a book together. Oh my God. Because what happens is, when I write, I sit there, I have enough trouble arguing with me. I sit there and I do things and I fight with myself about whether this chapter works or doesn't work. Well, I could imagine having 2 partners and then talking about how this book will be laid out, what will be chapter 1, what will be chapter 2, what's more important than this. So talk to me a little bit about that end. Let's talk the writing end of delivering information that a CEO needs to know.
Well, what comes to mind first, Vinny, is my experience with writing a book with Randy, the co-author.
Okay.
And so if it's okay to start there, because I think it's important. If someone's considering writing a book and they want to write it with another person, there's
like
a
starting
lot
a business.
more
Friendship goes out the window. Forget it.
I would say it's more like a marriage.
Yeah.
If you've ever been married, right? It is.
Friendship goes out the window there too.
Yeah,
No.
it can.
It
Except,
can, yeah.
you know what I found most fascinating about this was the art of compromise.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was
What are
very
you willing
challenging.
to keep?
Yes.
What are you willing to give up?
Yes.
Good. And sometimes you need a backboard. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I write a chapter and I go, perfect. I read it 2 days later and go, what the heck was I drinking? And it just doesn't work. So you do have to look at it, and it in a way it would be very good to have someone over your shoulder.
In some ways. I think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it also depends on what your preferences are. For example, I need to write by myself. I need to be by myself in front of my computer or at my desk.
Middle of the night for me. When do you write?
I wrote most of the time in the morning.
Morning. That's
morning,
good.
yeah, most of the time. I'm
a little
fresh
bit of a morning
and I
person,
like that.
I like to write 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh.
Some of my friends go, Vin, did you send me an email at 3:30 in the morning? I say, yeah, that's when I'm up. Because the only ones bothering me are the cats who want to sleep on the keyboard while I'm writing. But the kids are asleep, my wife's asleep, my friends aren't calling, they're not at the door. There's not a million excuses. You can't go out and wash the car at 3:30 in the morning.
Right.
You can't, and you don't do 100 million other things. So it's a nice quiet time for me. But morning could be that way too.
Yeah.
So you write in the morning.
I write in the morning. And by contrast, Randy needed to talk.
In the morning. Oh,
In the morning.
no.
Talk.
That's not good.
Talk. She, in fact, wanted to record her chapters. Because the way we approach this is we shared the chapters.
Yeah.
And so she wanted to talk. And that's, even
Yeah.
when I was writing, she wanted to talk. And it didn't work for me.
No.
And so we finally had to come to a decision to separate when we wrote. And so she was able to write when it was going to be most comfortable for her, and she could talk all she wanted to herself.
And strangely enough, there was a writer friend of mine. She used to say to me, do you know what I write? I write first thing in the morning in my nightgown. And I say, really? Too much information. She said, no. Seriously, I would need to be comfortable. And I need to relax, and I need to be me when I'm writing. And that makes sense to me. That makes big sense to me. I have my space. I have my little man cave now, It's my room. That's where I write. And I close the door, and I do what I have to do in there. Everything I need is where I need it. And sometimes it has to be. But not everybody's like that.
Right.
There's people who can write here, right now. And not everyone's like that. So finding a partner to write with, big deal, isn't it?
Yes. And we didn't know this about each other before we started this project.
Wow. Yeah, it's a marriage.
It is a marriage.
It's a marriage.
Yeah. It actually produced what we believe is very good work because it reflects the differences in us.
Did you have times when you...
Yes.
Oh, yeah, real
Yes.
clash?
In fact, there was one word that I wanted to use in the book, pragmatic. Randy refused to let me use that word.
Oh,
She
wow.
goes, Carol,
Yeah,
that word would never come out of my mouth. So I said, well, there were certain words that you chose that wouldn't come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Except I decided, okay, what word would you be willing to use?
That's compromise.
Yes.
Marriage.
So she said practical. It didn't have the punch I was looking for, but that is the word we decided on in that particular case.
But at least you were able to decide on something. That's
Yes.
important. Big question. Are you guys still friends?
Yes, we are,
Good.
actually.
That's a good thing.
Yes, we
That's a
don't
good
see each
thing.
other as much because she's from Long Island.
It's funny. One of the things we're saying here is when you're writing a book about business and you're writing a book together, it's a business. Sometimes the business of writing is, in fact, business. So it is very important that when you are sitting down to decide what the outcome of this thing has to be, you have to be on the same page.
You do. You do. You absolutely do.
So I just want to go back for a minute to Rants and Raves. Why the title? What's Rants and Raves have to do with this book?
Well, it actually has a double meaning. We decided we wanted a title to reflect the change in behavior that we're trying to create. So the book is designed to help CEOs, managers, and business owners really have an influence on their employees' behaviors. And so we depict in the book two fictitious employees. One is Rant and one is Rave.
Oh, cool.
Rant represents the behaviors that you don't want your employees showing to the customer, right? The Raves are all the behaviors that we want them practicing, because the customer then will rave about your company.
Right.
And so if they experience through Rave, they're going to rave about your company. If they have their customer experience with Rant, they're going to rant about their experience.
All right, so speaking of Rants and Raves, now you're sitting down, you're getting this all together. How long did it take to get this thing all together?
It took us 2 years to write
2
the
years.
book.
I know. Sometimes, do you know Sybil Luddington, The Call to Arms? 3.5 years. Because the information, I had the information, but the information had to be all pulled together from so many different sources and places. By the time you get this thing all together. So you get it all together, and then you're facing this new thing called the editor.
Yes.
What happened there?
We fired 3 editors before we found one that we could work with.
Wow.
Yes.
And then you finally got together with the 3 editor, after the 3 editors, with the editor that you wanted.
That we were able
was
to
that
work with.
editor willing to compromise? Or did that editor say, no, it needs to be this way? What was wrong with the other 3 or the other 2?
The other 2 didn't get customer service, Vinny.
Oh, they didn't understand the concept
We have
of your
high
book.
expectations of how we, right, in terms of how we are when we're the customer or the client.
You know, one of the things I tell new writers, be careful. Because it's so easy to get your book and hand it to someone and say, hey, read this. And if you give your book to the wrong person, a person who doesn't understand what you're trying to do, you're going to get a reaction that isn't your reaction. It's an unfair statement about your book. And that's true with editors. It's true with people who critique other people's work. I happen to know a person who critiques work who's wonderful, gets it. But there's people out there who don't get it. So they read your book and they give you advice that's wrong. Wrong. So it's very important to get someone who understands where you are coming from. So you finally did get an editor.
Yes.
You got it all together. Then did you sit down and read it from beginning to end and say, whoa, is this what we started with? Is this what we're trying to do?
It was fairly on target with the end result we were looking for, you know,
That's
in terms of, because we decided we wanted to create a book that would use humor in a very serious subject, right? Because
you need some humor to loosen it up.
Some levity in a
Heavy
serious
stuff.
right? We wanted also to have the employee perspective. So this wasn't just about the CEO. We wanted to provide insight from both perspectives. Because of all the business books written on customer service, it's typically the perspective of the CEO, the manager, or the business owner. We wanted this book to be different. And so we interviewed employees as well as CEOs. And both of those perspectives are reflected in this book.
When this show is over this afternoon, I'm going to be sitting in my man cave watching it to see if it did what I was hoping it would do. At what point did you sit and say, "Oh my God, okay, send it to the bookstores"? Was there a point where you said it's ready, or are there still parts about it you're a little nervous about?
We were so thorough, and we really, after the experience with the third editor and having the bad experiences with the previous editors, we really understood what it is we wanted to achieve and what we were looking for as an end result. So I have to say, once we had the manuscript, done with all of our final edits, it was done.
All right. So then here's the big question: This book is done. It's out. It's hopefully doing what you need it to do.
Yes.
What's next, Carol?
Well, we do want a sequel to this.
Good.
We want to focus in on following Rant and Rave. In other words, helping.
So what will that book direct itself to? Still the CEOs, or are you now going to direct the next book specifically to the employees? Who does the next book go to?
We are leaning more towards the employee as a sequel to this.
Good.
Employees will actually appreciate a lot of the content because they're reflected in here. And we deliver this content through Rant and Rave, who are the employees of the company.
Do you have a working title for a new book?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, tell you what. I'm looking forward to a new book. I'm looking forward to possibility of what could come from this. And I can't thank you enough for being here with us today. It has been a pleasure. Hopefully you understand that there are a lot of reasons for writing. Sometimes it's fiction. Sometimes it's to tell a good story. Sometimes it's to improve your life and others' lives. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us today. Carol, a pleasure. Thank you for joining Let's Talk Writing.